This is Marcus South, aka Marty the Moth Martinez from Lucha Underground, and you're watching the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. It's gonna be fun.
Welcome to a Thursday edition of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast, episode 214. This is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, just hanging in there. Apparently, Cook County now has the most COVID cases in the country in one area, so that's wonderful. So just
Congratulations.
So just trying to stay safe and have my mask on and use gloves when I'm out at certain places, and just trying to stay safe like you are,
Absolutely. And if you would like to go and find out more information about that stuff, I'm sure Jay, every once in a while on Twitter, will let you guys know about that at WorkShootPod. Jay, I'm sure that you'll talk about that and a whole lot more, also, I guess, in our Facebook group. And, if you want to follow us, you can do it that way. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher,
Spotify. Leave a review, 5 stars on iTunes. Check us out. Our Facebook page is Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. So yeah, check us out. If we watch the pay-per-view next week, which we probably we'll be live tweeting it. So just look out for that. I tried to live tweet a little bit yesterday, but I didn't want to get anything spoiled for me. So yeah, we're trying to be active as much on Twitter as possible. Check us out.
Absolutely. Second episode of the week. If you missed it, you go back and listen to episode 213 when we spoke quite a bit about the Becky Lynch situation. Jay, before we talk about Wednesday's topic of the Wednesday Wars, any more thoughts about Becky Lynch or anything from the pay-per-view or anything else?
Yeah, so I watched the interview with Asuka on the Bump. I don't know if this is their daily show. I don't really know what the Bump is, WWE's thing. Asuka spoke about it, and it was. I don't know. I just really like Asuka. She seems like a really sweet, nice person. But she spoke in Japanese, and they subtitled her. So I wonder if possibly they will do that more when she's on Raw. Because listen, she's great in her kind of crazy, goofy, yelling in Japanese character, but she's the champion now. So she's going to have to put over feuds. She's going to have to put over wrestlers. She's going to have to put herself over. How does she do that not having a great knowledge of the language? NXT booked her amazingly, and I don't expect the WWE to do the main roster to do the same. They haven't in the years she's been on there. So I wonder if we see more, if we see her be more serious, if we see more subtitles with her and their build, it'll be interesting to see what they do with her.
Yeah, I think the Bump is their digital, daily or every couple of days show where they give a chance for, I guess, their performers, and they don't call them wrestlers, I guess superstars, to try to get themselves over and I guess try to get some of their news out. I guess they went and for NXT this past week, they went and tried to get people to tune in to let them know that there was going to be a big announcement, which turned to be the return of In Your House Takeover on, I think it's June 7th, which we'll get into momentarily. And I think that's a good way to try to get a little bit news out there, to not scoop, but try to get a little bit more stuff out for the people who are more digitally, internet inclined.
Especially now with everybody being at home, right? So even if you're working from home, you're still on Twitter, or you're still, messing around. So then you'll still see kind of things that are going on, so.
I think it's a smart way to get, and it's unfortunate that the idea when you said the Bump, I think I know what that is. I don't know how well that is working compared to more established sites like, F4W and ProWrestling.net and, a lot of these other sites.
But the Bump is also the low price for free, and how much, we're marks, right? I mean, we're another level. For more casual fans, the Bump might be a little bit more of a thing. So
yeah. This is something that should be on the WWE Network. That most likely. But
yeah, but I mean, you think about it, it's like, I mean, we don't need to get in this whole conversation about
sure,
the bump or
absolutely.
whatever. But I think Twitter is how we get a lot. I mean, we do a lot of stuff on Twitter, so we put a lot of our information. How are people going to get information quicker? Us doing an hour-long podcast on Thursdays, or us live tweeting Raw and me putting Sami Zayn over as a bump machine? You know what I mean? Like, people are going to get that information faster. So, however they put it out, they put it out. We could talk about what they've done with the network all day, but I think the bump's a nice little vehicle to put some guys over and get some different characters out there. I think Otis has been on there like a bunch. Not that I've seen it, but I've noticed he's been on there.
Yeah. But speaking of, you mentioned his name a moment ago. Let's start with Sami Zayn. So apparently, Sami Zayn is, at least initially, I think, was hurt. And he had some sort of, surgery, a small surgery. I don't know what it was for. And I don't know if he's still in Canada and he hasn't been able to come back. So they decided, unlike when, Brock Lesnar wrestles once every, 4 months, they decided to strip him of the title when nobody.
I want to just correct you there. I don't think it was that he couldn't come back. I mean, Rhea Ripley went to Australia. I think it was his decision not to come back. Yeah, I think it was his decision, and I think that also could be a factor in them strip. I don't know, but I think it was his decision. Like Roman Reigns made a decision. Now I don't know if Sami Zayn has any underlying conditions or what have you, but he did make the choice, testing to not show up, and they stripped him of the title.
Yeah, but here's the big problem with this, and I think you agree with me, is the idea that unless all the information that's come out is BS, and I'm hoping it's not, because we have a lot of relevant sources that we been able to believe, especially ones who may or may not officially work for the company. Talking about you, Ryan Satin here. The idea that
hey, we may need to have him. We may have him on at some point. We're going to bury the guy.
We won't bury him fully then. The idea that Vince McMahon said that anyone who does not feel comfortable coming into doing these shows will not, be punished or lose their push. So then you don't feel comfortable coming, you're not going to lose your push, but you don't feel comfortable coming because of a pandemic, but you're going to lose your title for a title that is never pushed and nobody cares about within the company, the IC title. But we're removing it. It's when you're Jordan Devlin and you're across the pond and you can't get here and you still need to go and push stories because it's one of the titles on your show, NXT.
Don't they still need to push stories with the IC title?
How often is the IC title even used?
It's been a bigger part of the show. Brian fought for it with Sami Zayn. Nakamura had it for. I mean, it's a secondary title, but it's still a title, and it's still an excuse for them to have matches. They need to tell stories. We can't see Leon Ruff lose every week. We need to tell some stories. We need to have some jazz on the show. SmackDown's almost unwatchable, right? Now you have an IC tournament, put some guys over, have another chance to get another guy over. This coronavirus is not going away, folks. Like, it's not going anywhere. Now, will the WWE smarten up and do testing like AEW is? I don't know. I think that's how you could have some of these guys come back. But for now, they're doing what they're doing, where they're taking temperatures and trying to keep things very sanitary. But, I mean, he might not be back for a long time. So it kind of makes sense to strip him of the title.
But don't you think you give this thing a little bit of time? I mean, yes, in theory.
How much time are they going to give it? I mean, this coronavirus is not going. They're talking about this going into the fall. Fauci test. I mean, it's a mess, right? This is not going to end anytime soon. So if this is not going to end anytime soon, kind of like, what are we doing here? Strip over the title. It's fine. He gets a shot when he comes back. He's already making this into a storyline on Twitter. He'll come back, make it another storyline. Maybe you give the title to a babyface, and they lead up to Sami Zayn getting it back, and you put another guy over in the process.
I guess I understand his character is the great liberator, and he's the guy who gets, he's basically the guy that nobody cares about, within the company, and he's got to do all these underhanded things to get the push. I understand that's his character, but it just feels a little bit wrong. And maybe as you want to say, as we're all marks, I'm buying into the story, and that's the purpose of all this. But it just feels weird and wrong. The idea of, and twofold, Maybe because of what we spoke about last week with the whole entire Roman Reigns thing. Roman Reigns goes home, and all of a sudden we haven't heard his name on TV since he's gone home. And this just feels like another example. A guy's not coming into work, so all of a sudden we're going to take the title off him, and he's basically gone.
But Corey, he is gone, and he's not injured with a knee injury. He doesn't want to show up, which is absolutely his right, and I applaud him for not doing that because of the coronavirus, which isn't going away. It's not like he has a torn ACL. He comes back 6 to 9 months. We don't know if this is going to last another month, another 2 months, another 3 months. We have no idea. So WWE, and listen, I wrote the WWE for a lot of things, and I have on this very podcast, but they have to do what's best for the company, and they don't know when Sami Zayn's going to come back. So for them to strip him of the title, have a tournament, put some other guys on the brand over, I mean, makes a lot of sense. Make the title actually kind of a little bit more relevant maybe by having a tournament. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad idea. I really don't. And Sami Zayn, this falls right into his character as well. It falls right into his character. So I don't know. I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think it'll be interesting to see where they go and who they put over as well.
I see what you're saying. I don't know. I just think and I know we're going around in circles, so I'll
it doesn't seem like a good look. I get that. It doesn't seem like it's not a great look from the company standpoint, but I think they've got to do what they've got to do. Them firing 30 people and then saying they don't have money, that's disgusting. You know what I mean? This is just, they had to do what they had to do.
Yeah, my last point on this, we'll move on right now. I just wonder the people who are, and I'm not sure who is and who isn't sitting out right now because of uncomfortably, how many people are now might now rush back who don't really feel like they need to or should after seeing the idea of a guy who has a title who they thought was getting pushed. The second that he says, I don't feel comfortable coming back, they take the title off him, don't give him a chance to see if how they want to handle this. Just says, all right, we're just going to, on a random WWE backstage, all right, we're taking the title off him, and that's it. You don't even do on TV as even as a storyline thing of we're going to build up where, you have it as a segment on TV as building up in a storyline on your even television show.
Yeah, but hold on, Corey. I mean, we do this thing where we want to rip WWE. John Moxley couldn't defend the IWGP US title because of a tsunami, and they strip him of the title, right? So, I mean, it was a tsunami. He couldn't get there, and they still strip him of the title. So, and that's New Japan, the company, with all the Marks love. We're Marks. We all love it. They're the greatest company ever, right? So they did something that was, I don't want to say shady, but just it was surprising to me they stripped him of the title. I was surprised when I saw that. They've got to do what's best for them. WWE has to do what's best for them. Mm-hmm. And I get it. I won't rip them for that. And you know what? Maybe it'll make SmackDown a little more watchable. Please make it more watchable because it's an awful show.
Hey, let's see where they go with this, and let's hope for the best. I'm a little skeptical. Hopefully,
and you have a right to be. The shows haven't been good, and Otis is the Money in the Bank winner.
Hey, let's hope they know more than we do. I doubt it, but Vince McMahon's been doing this for a long time. Hopefully, this is one of those that he gets right. But usually, our best and most fun of the week talking about AEW, NXT. AEW, NXT both were down this week. I believe I might be wrong on this, but I believe I read a little while ago that AEW had its lowest rating yet for the week. For the week 33 of the competition. I believe they had a 649,000 to 605,000 views. News once again, was the number one, basically all of the number one shows. I do wonder, Jay, you got to tell me I'm crazy, but especially when it was on a digital platform, I do wonder if UFC holding a fight night, was a reason why the numbers were down. It was a show on ESPN Plus. I mean, the main event was Glover Teixeira, who was a former number one contender for the light heavyweight title. For the hardcore fans, he is a known name. I don't know how much of an impact that was against the number. The first show that they had back did apparently over 700,000 buys on pay-per-view.
Yeah, but those shows don't start till 10 o'clock.
It was on 9. The show started at 9.
At 9? Okay. When was the pre-fight? The pre-show was at 8.
I believe so. So I mean,
Yeah, so that's basically their whole and just so you know, both NXT and AEW were down big time.
Yeah.
I mean they both cratered. So AEW was down 78,000 viewers and NXT was down 59,000 viewers. So AEW still won, but it wasn't much of a battle. So yeah, they both did poorly. And Corey, you're right. I mean, again, live sports is always going to trump pro wrestling, and so maybe that's kind of what happened here. People watch the I thought about watching UFC, but I kind of forgot about it. Basically, I was going to watch it, and then I forgot about the time, and AEW was starting. But it's definitely something I would have checked out. We're craving live sports right now, so maybe that did take a bite out of the apple.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I do wonder what's going to happen, and we're forecasting a week and a half in advance. But next Saturday, when on the 23rd, when AEW goes back to pay-per-view, there's a UFC show that's going to be on, I believe, ESPN, the mothership, on that night for a free show. I wonder, a live sporting event, how much that could affect people who might want to watch having to pay $60 for an event. I mean, we'll talk more about that, next week.
Yeah, that's all. I think that's going to be a definitely a longer conversation. I think our preview of Money in the Bank of Double or Nothing is going to be one thing, but who's going to buy this thing? I think it's going to be so interesting. So I'm really excited for that conversation next week. Absolutely,
and then, like I said, and we'll get to the guy we're going to talk about in about 30 seconds here, but Mike Tyson was a guy that was mentioned, not heavily on the show, but it was mentioned, and then became a major topic over the last 24 hours when it came to social media. And I don't know how much coverage it got on ESPN and main network, but there was stuff on ESPN.com, CBS.com, CBSSports.com, on Twitter and all these other places. It got a lot of coverage. But Mike Tyson is going to be the guy presenting the winner of the TNT Championship, a guy who, when we were kids, he was the biggest not at the time, it wasn't called mixed martial arts, but for boxing, he was the biggest star in the world. I mean, in WrestleMania 14, he's one of the main reasons why WWE turned around and won the war. He was the big guy who was in that Stone Cold Steve Austin rise of, he was the guy who got on the face when Austin became a super cool character. He was at one time Iron Mike Tyson. I don't know what is his impact in a week and a half.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's kind of become this interesting cultural phenomenon. There's this shirt company called Roots of Fight. They've got Bret Hart, Andre the Giant, Muhammad Ali, and a bunch of these guys do shirts. They have a bunch of these guys who have shirts, and the shirts are pretty cool. They're incredibly expensive, which is why I don't have any. I haven't bought any, but the shirts are really. What'd you say?
Is that what the Undertaker was wearing during his special?
Yeah. So the shirts are really cool, but they're very expensive. They have a Mysterio shirt. The shirts are dope, but a lot of people like The Rock, you always see a lot of guys wear the Iron Mike Tyson t-shirt. He's kind of taken on a cultural, he's a real part of the culture. He was in The Hangover. Mm-hmm. So he's been a real part of things that have gone on. I in 2020 now, I mean, I don't know. The thing is, I guess there's two questions. Is he relevant, and is he going to get them more pay-per-view buys? Is he relevant? Yeah, I think so. I think people are holy shit, Mike Tyson, blah, blah, blah. We remember him, blah, blah, blah. Is he going to bring them more pay-per-view buys? I don't think so. I mean, he's not involved in an angle. He hasn't been on TV. I mean, the run-up to the Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin match, in the WrestleMania years ago, he was a big part of the storyline. And he's just, he's going to present the title, and that's going to be it. So it sounds like.
Do you really think that's all he's going to do?
Well, it doesn't matter, right? It's what have we seen him on TV do? Wrestling's about building up. Wrestling's about storylines. So it's great that he's going to be there, but what the hell is he going to do when he's there? So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they've really built him up to the point where he might do something. So, that's part of the reason why, like, I mean, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think more people are gonna buy the pay-per-view because of him. Let's put it that way. That's just my opinion. Who knows? People might be curious. But if he was on TV for a couple of weeks, I know that you mentioned before the show they've been doing he's been doing workout videos where he looked great. If they would have showed those, but there's been no buildup. He's just gonna be on the show. So, I don't know. Doesn't mean much. Doesn't mean much for me, and I don't think it'll mean much for the casual fan.
I do wonder. Like I said, I think they have another because the one thing because I think this is very two-sided.
They're gonna fly him in with coronavirus, and they're gonna fly him in. He's gonna test. Hopefully, he's negative. Hope to God. Then they're gonna fly him in again Saturday for the pay-per-view, and then test him again and spend all that. It doesn't make any sense to me. What's he gonna do? What's his storyline gonna be? Hey guys, I'm presenting the title. Hey, what? He's not a special enforcer. He's not the referee. Isn't he just literally presenting the belt?
Well, here's the thing that's interesting. A couple of sides on here is the idea of I think they're gonna go, and I think there's a good chance he'll be on the show this next Wednesday because they have one show before the pay-per-view. I think he might be on the show, or they'll do some sort of highlight package to promote him on showing, how bad of an ass he is, the fact that, he was known at one time as the baddest man on the planet.
So wait. That doesn't make sense. So they're going to do a promo package on him presenting a title. What sense does that make?
Well, you're promoting the guy who's going to be there.
Everyone knows who the fuck Mike Tyson is. Everybody knows who Mike Tyson is. They want to know what he's going to do there. Everybody knows he's Mike Tyson. I'm trying not to curse as much on the podcast. Everybody knows who Mike Tyson is. Even if you're like a kid, you know who Mike Tyson is. So they're going to do this. And he's also like 50 or 60 now. So they're going to show these videos of him knocking people out in the 80s. And people are going to be like, huh, I want to really see him present a title to somebody. That's exciting. Like, I don't know.
But here's the thing, though. I'm just trying to bring this out here, though. I think that they'll most likely have him, they'll show some sort of highlight package of the things that have been going out on Instagram and Twitter over the last, 3 or 4 days. They'll go and he might even be there on next week's show and maybe get into some sort of confrontation maybe with someone, maybe like an MJF or.
Why is he getting in a confrontation when he's presenting a title? Doesn't make any sense to me.
You could have some sort of cocky heel who goes, he's washed up. Why is this guy going to be here? Like some almost like what you're saying, the idea of who cares about this guy who's some washed up 53-year-old who's taking the spotlight away from us young guys who are the now, where you have something where you could build up where there could be some sort of confrontation, but of like, why is this guy here stealing my, my shine? Of like basically, like an MJF.
MJF's not even in a tournament. He's not. He's wrestling someone else.
I understand, but that's the cockiness of like an MJF character. And then, like I said, I think that you're gonna have. But here's the other part of this, and we'll move on to the other part. I think
it's more to me. It's more like I get what you're saying, Corey, and in theory, what you're saying is not bad. If MJF was in the match, that'd be one thing. Even if Tyson punches him out during the pay-per-view, I get that too. But the logical sense to me on how they're going to put that all together and why anyone cares doesn't make sense. Because, right? Like I'm sure it would not surprise me if MJF is involved in the pay-per-view with Cody Rhodes and then Mike Tyson punches him out. That does not surprise me at all. But again, is that selling people on a pay-per-view? And what's he going to do on Wednesday that's going to be enough to say, oh, I got to order this pay-per-view because Mike Tyson's on there?
Well, that's what they have to do in the next.
In one week, I mean, listen, AEW's been tremendous. They've done some great stuff. I mean, selling this in 1 week is.
It's gonna be tough. I'm not disagreeing with you, but here's the other part of this, and move on right after this. If they had done this with 4 days before the pay-per-view, you bring in Mike Tyson, and you're like, oh, oh my God, Tyson's here. All right, 4 days to build. But with 2 weeks, the week and a half before Tyson's there's a chance that this could backfire on them, where Mike Tyson has helped his reputation over the last 15 or 20 years post his problems with the rape charges and the trial. But there's also, with the idea of Mike Tyson being back in the media, you can have groups that could boycott. Maybe you tell me I'm crazy here, but whenever you have celebrities who do things, there's always the chance that a lot of organizations could come out, and his unfavorable actions of the past could come back and haunt a company, when people find out he's going to be there. I mean,
in 2020, you're not off on that. But I mean, you're not off on that. But I mean,
and then the other part of this is the fact that you just had an interview with Tony Khan with the AEW Unfiltered or Unrestricted. I forgot the name of the podcast is, where he just said that the company is losing millions of dollars. I know they're billionaires, so they have more than enough money to lose. But do you think he's coming in cheap? The guy is most likely owes a lot of money in over the years of amount of money he's lost. I'm sure he's not working for cheap. You're losing a ton of money. You really think Mike Tyson is coming in for? I know he's a huge wrestling fan. You think he's coming in for no money?
I mean, I guess I don't know.
You're the one
here's the thing. Are you asking? Should they have brought him in? I'm kind
of agreeing with your point slightly here, but I'm just saying, I don't know. Is this a good look, a bad look? Does this work? I mean, this is the ultimate idea. No crowd, no fans. You're not making any revenue here. Does Mike Tyson equal pay-per-view buys in 2020?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think so.
So if he doesn't, then this is a waste of money. Unless this is, the fact that, and I'll be the first one to say, I work for CBS Television. All cards at the table. I work for CBS Television, which is owned by Viacom. Viacom, I believe, still owns part of TNT. TNT owns the Cartoon Network. I believe he still has a show on the Cartoon Network. Some sort of
Mike Tyson.
Yeah, Mike Tyson has a cartoon that he has on the
good for him
on the network. So I mean, there might be some sort of barter deal.
I mean that's quite a connection. But I mean, I guess it's possible.
It's possible. So I don't know.
I guess here's the thing. It's not my money. It's not your money. Is it worth it? Why not? Who knows? Maybe it'll be something. Maybe it won't. I think your point that's maybe the most interesting is these groups coming out and really protesting against them. However, he's been on WWE. He's has his own show. He has apparently a show. He's on social media. I don't know. I mean, we're hearing, I don't want to get into the conviction and all that stuff, but it sounds like there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. And so I think he's kind of turned himself around, his reputation around. So I don't know if we'll see groups, going nuts. I mean, Vic, murdered a bunch of dogs and then came back to the NFL, and people protested it, and they still had the games, right? So will people protest? Maybe. Will they still have the show? Sure. Will it hurt buys because people are like, oh, Mike Tyson's on? No. Will it help? No. I think it'll probably be, a steady effect. But the one thing we have to realize with AEW, with their pay-per-view, they want it to seem like a big show. And there's going to be nobody there. So they need to have it seem like a big show. And one of the ways you do that is by having Mike Tyson on there. So I get where they're at. They can't just make it seem like this is just, not just an ordinary show. Not just a AEW Dynamite. So I get the idea of having him on there. So it's I don't think it's a risk that's going to be a disaster. I think it'll be fine. Do I think it'll help them sell pay-per-views? No. Do I think it's something that is not a bad idea? I don't think it's a bad idea either.
Yeah, like I said, we'll see. And like I said, I think it's a good discussion. We'll talk about it mostly more. We'll see how the mainstream media, if they pick up on the story. Like I said, Jericho has been on podcasts. Like he was on the Rich Eisen show last week. And, Rich Eisen, was talking glowingly about AEW recently. And so they get mainstream, talk about the company here and there. So that's good. And we'll see if the Tyson thing helps get interest in the week leading up to the show. But let's talk about some other things that were positives and negatives from AEW NXT this week. Return of In Your House. Any thoughts on, do you think this makes NXT feel any more relevant in the empty arena era? It'll be a Sunday show. Does it matter? Any fond memories of In Your House?
No, the In Your Houses were horrible. They weren't a good. It wasn't a good show. They were good pay-per-views. And also, I did not watch them because I didn't have cable for a long time, so I never even like watched the In Your House pay-per-views. But having watched them back, they were not great shows. So it was a good concept at the time. I mean, I've watched a couple In Your Houses, but I wasn't watching them like every month or whatever. I couldn't afford it. What, $35 a month?
Were amazing.
What'd you say?
The black boxes were amazing.
Yeah, there you go. Did not have one of those. I know like everybody in New York City did, but no, I think it's, you know what? This is the time where you throw stuff against the wall and see what works. Obviously, you know, In Your House, they're playing off of you being in the house. And so I think there's that kind of interplay. And I applaud NXT for like, let's try something different. Let's see if this works. Let's do something different and see what happens. So I don't think it's a bad idea. And, you know, obviously they didn't have TakeOver. So, yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to try it. Do it as a Sunday event, Sunday afternoon or whatever. I think it's actually like kind of cool to do an event at that time. People will be home. Obviously, we're home all the time. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it'll be interesting to. I think it also all depends on what matches are on the show. I mean, if you got Cross versus Ciampa, you've got, you know, if it's got a big show feel, it'll be cool. If it's, you know, some of the matches that we saw, you know, this week, I'm not going to care who's if it's In Your House takeover or just another.
But Corey, but here's a question: whether it's a takeover quality show or whether it's a NXT on Wednesday show, will you be watching it?
Well, I watch everything. I do this podcast.
Would you be watching it if you were not doing the podcast?
Right now, what did I say?
Well, come on, NXT has been pretty solid stuff.
And you know, and I was going to say this earlier, and a lot of people have been said this about, and I want to get your opinion on this. A lot of people said last night's show was a lot more fun, and I wasn't sure what people meant by that. Did you feel that way, that NXT last night was a lot more fun than you?
Well, listen, and I'm going to throw this out there. Mm-hmm. That Riddle Thatcher match was awesome. And because I love matches like that. It's so different from the indie athletes, drop kicks, flips, poison ranas, all these crazy moves. It was a real mat-based match.
It felt like almost like an MMA match.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved everything about that match. Probably one of my favorite TV matches of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I loved it. So I don't know. I thought I enjoyed it. Was it a fun show? I
don't know, because like
I don't know that it was. I don't know that it was any more. I don't know that it was any more fun than usual. I think it was kind of a typical solid NXT show. I know they tried to do the Brady Bunch thing with the Undisputed Era, which I thought was extremely corny, but I mean, they tried some different things. Maybe that's it. Maybe they're doing more vignettes. They're trying different things. You know, maybe that's a part of kind of what they're doing, what's going on.
And I thought some of that stuff worked. I thought some of it didn't. I mean, I thought the promo package they did with Reina Gonzalez and
Dakota Kai.
I thought that was. I mean, I thought that was actually something they should have done most likely maybe a month or so ago. You know, when they first got together. But I thought that was a really well done package. I thought that once again, and I think this is a really, really good thing. The stuff they've been doing with the Garganos, with the whole thing with almost like the mirror universe, where all of a sudden they go to black and white, and you know what they actually what they're really thinking. I think those promos have been really good. I like the idea that they're building with basically the couples are facing each other. Mia Yim and Keith Lee versus Gargano and the
Candice LeRae.
Candice LeRae. I was thinking the Poison Pixie. Actually, think it's a pretty cool nickname for her. I mean, I thought that stuff really worked well. I mean, I didn't. Besides the main event, I didn't love the wrestling on the show. I didn't think it was a great wrestling show like most weeks have been. But I liked the show. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if I thought it was a fun show compared to other weeks, but I thought it was a good, solid.
I thought you were going to say people thought it wasn't as good of a show.
No.
That's interesting too. But the main event was awesome.
I thought that was really good.
But yeah, no, I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed the show. I'd say more than AEW. Yeah, definitely enjoyed it more than AEW.
Really, I loved AEW this week. I thought AEW really did a good.
The problem is that main event with Christopher Daniels and Luke. You have a main event where you know what the winner's going to be, and Luke Harper basically beat him up the whole time. It wasn't much of a main event for me.
I thought as an overall show, it was a better show.
The 4-way match was clunky.
I thought the 4-way match, but I think the 4-way match built to other matches. I think that's what
what are they building to? Sheeta's already with the Britt Baker. It's fine that they are good at storytelling, but we're saying, was the match good? I don't think the match was good. It accomplished what it was supposed to. It put Sheeta over, who's been a number one contender for like 3 months. Why she hasn't gotten a title shot, I have no idea. But now she will.
Well, because the Native Beast has been in quarantine.
Yeah. And then Britt Baker obviously turned him. But also, why is she going after Statlander when Sheeta's the one who broke her nose? So that's also kind of I don't know. I know you liked it. I didn't really care for the 4-way match so much.
Well, Sam, I'll make this quick, which I never do. But I really like the idea that I think pretty much everything on that show led to the stories that were going to happen at the pay-per-view. I just think
that doesn't mean the matches were good.
I didn't say the matches were good or bad. I'm saying that the quality of what you did. One of the things that you said when we first came back doing this show, and maybe I got this wrong, and if I do, I apologize off the top here. But one of the problems that at least what I think you said when AEW returned, was that the show was a good show and it was fine, but it wasn't building things properly. And I think what they're doing now is they're building stories better. They're building the ideas of one thing matters to the next. And you have a pay-per-view that's a rush, and I fully agree, it's a rush job pay-per-view. If they had their way, and I think they should, and we both agree, just like WWE should not be doing pay-per-views right now, but they have to, I guess, in order to make people happy with, people who are, they got to do the show. They are at least making the idea of, shouldn't happening right now. Moxley versus Brody Lee has to happen. They're building the idea of this is momentum of this happening. The idea of the 4-way built to 2 matches. The idea of this built to this. These things built to the next step. The idea of that opening segment. I thought that was corny as all hell. The idea of Cody coming in, being a mock Stone Cold Steve Austin with his truck. I thought, that, but I thought the brawl itself, I thought was well done. All those things built to the idea of. Okay.
I don't disagree with that. That doesn't make it a better show to me than NXT was.
Okay.
I'm not. Listen, it wasn't SmackDown or Raw. It was a better show than that. But I just, again, we're comparing the 2 shows, and I think a lot of times, and NXT was better for the most part. I think AEW's really turned it around. I just think this wasn't one of their better shows. I think it was a little clunky. I thought some of the storylines were a little corny. I didn't like everything they did, but it was still a very, it was a fun, watchable show for sure.
Okay. Any other major topics you want to get to before our usual breaking down of most likely the best thing that we saw all week?
Well, there's 2 things. Are we going over the Road Warriors or the Undertaker first?
I was going to go with Undertaker and then the Road Warriors.
Let's go.
All right, so we have the first of our five-part series of the WWE Network, the last ride of the Undertaker, which I thought it was a really good, solid first episode. It was the first half hour was super depressing. I thought it was a really interesting look on a guy whose career he knows is over, but the pressures of still trying to be a character. The character of the Undertaker and the idea of the opening access of a guy whose most important thing was basically protecting the business, and him saying the words. It's something that we've spoken on the podcast on and off the air on the first run of this show. And since we've been back on the idea of watching his matches now is kind of uncomfortable and we don't really want to see him, and the
watching him walk was uncomfortable during a documentary.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was, and the idea of him saying, having your, someone's father saying back, 20 years ago, son, this was the Undertaker. And now seeing me wrestle is, something you heard about. And then, watching it, I felt like the guy that he was talking about. I'm going to tell my son or daughter, that back in the day, this is who he used to be. I mean, it was a hard watch at times, that first half. And
Yeah, yeah.
it got better. I mean, it was a great insight into what happens backstage. I mean,
Corey,
that
did you think that he was a little? I mean, you mentioned it, right, where he talked about how he felt about who he was in the past and who he is now and stuff. I felt like he came off as almost a little delusional, right?
yeah.
Like where he talked about how he was and how he is. It's like, dude, if you're limping to the ring, your hip is gone. That Reigns match was awful, and I know they're going to get to that in the next episode. That's kind of part of what they're going back to.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I felt to a certain extent that he wasn't. I don't want to say delusional. That's probably not the right word, but he was not being honest with himself and who he was. And I don't want to say that it's a money grab and whatever, because whatever money you can get in this world by any means, not by any means, but any money you can get in this world legally or whatever, if you're a hustler, go do what you got to do. I don't hate on people for that, other than being a scumbag to other people. And he didn't do that, right? Vince McMahon wanted him to wrestle, so he said he's still going to keep wrestling. And he's going to pay him handsomely to do it, obviously. I don't know. Maybe it's an ego thing. Maybe it was, I feel like I still have to. Maybe it was, I still feel like I have it. Maybe it was, like AJ says, he needs money from Michelle McCool. I don't know. But they didn't get into, he basically said, I come back because Vince wants me to come back. And it sounds like his allegiance to Vince is really, really, really strong, which is interesting. And other people have talked about that. Ed just talked about his big allegiance to Vince when he was going to come back before because AEW offered him a deal. So it is interesting. These people have these allegiances to Vince, but again, Vince made Edge's career. He made Undertaker's career, obviously. I don't know. I just felt like the Undertaker was really lying to himself during this.
Now, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That was my one really, really big takeaway from it.
So that was the first half of the first half hour. And then you had the I think it was the edge line where he said, made the comparison to your former quarterback, the guy who I think was the reason why you're a fan of the Green Bay Packers. Brett, seeing at the very end of his career, Brett Favre, in a Vikings uniform, throwing that last touchdown, just being there at the very end.
Well, it's more about like sometimes you still have it, and then sometimes you really, really don't.
Right.
So that comparison, yeah.
Right. But then the second half, where he's talking about when he was talking about the Brock match, and he basically didn't remember any of the match, and with the concussions and everything else. And I know we've seen stuff about this when it comes to football players and pro athletes, but the access that we got in regards to that, it was just, I mean, yeah, we've heard 1,000 times athletes talk about it, especially with Chris Nowitzki talking about the research he's done and, the stuff that we saw recently with the great documentary, and we'll talk about it, Dark Side of the Ring, in a minute, with Chris Benoit. But the idea of how he did not remember anything from that match, and there's basically that whole entire remainder of that day he didn't remember, that was just why is anybody a professional wrestler?
I mean, look at Christian retired from concussions. Daniel Bryan retired from concussions, came back. Mm-hmm. Edge broke his neck a couple times, came back. These guys, listen, wrestling's choreographed. It's scripted. These guys put their bodies on the line, right? They really put their bodies on the line. So, yeah, that part is real. These guys putting their bodies on the line is real. And why Undertaker wants to keep coming back, I hope they get more into that, because I don't know, it's still a mystery to me. He's walking out there with half a hip. His body's broke to shit. He doesn't look. I think it was the Reigns match. He did not look in good shape at all. He had a big belly. I don't know. I think this is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, part 2 will be this Sunday coming up. I think it's the next 2 weeks. Then there's a break, and I think middle of June, the last 2 episodes will be next week. will be the results of this match of why he decided to come back. It is interesting. The one thing at the end, at least it appears the idea that he was retiring at the end of this match when he put the gloves and the jacket and the hat in the ring. That was supposed to be the end. So giving the rub to Roman Reigns was how that was supposed to be the end of it. That is an interesting thing. That I don't know if when we were doing the show at that time, I don't know if our aspect on that was that we thought this was.
It seemed like I watching that WrestleMania, that horrible match.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to retire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought that was it. So I did think that was it. But
yeah, it's interesting that
a couple of Saudi Arabia shows later, here we go.
A couple of $zillion later. So what's your thoughts going into the next, basically month and a half of these shows? Are you super interested,
Yes.
on where this goes?
Yeah, absolutely. I again, I'm a school counselor, and I deal in psychology every day. Not so much now with the pandemic, but when I was in school dealing with the kids, and psychology to me is so interesting. And dealing with a guy who is, where he is in his career now, I think is a really, really interesting thing. And so I'm fascinated by, the next episode they previewed, they showed him watching the Reigns match and being upset about it. And he's done some interviews where he said he was like really horrified watching the match and how bad he was, how he felt like his performance was, I should say, during it. And he was disappointed for Reigns during it. So, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see his psychology, how he kind of tells himself that he could still do it. I think that's going to be the interesting thing. Like why are you still doing this when it's clear that you don't have it anymore? How do you keep yourself motivated? Is it a financial thing? Is it I think I still got it? Is it they've talked about how these athletes lie to themselves and they tell themselves they still have. And Undertaker, you could say whatever, wrestling's fake or whatever. He's a great athlete. Mm-hmm. And he's been a great performer for a long time. So it could be a case of him lying to himself a little bit. So I don't know. It'll be very, very interesting to see how things play out for the next couple episodes.
Yeah. Super interesting first episode. Super interesting idea of where this goes. And it'll be very interesting to see how this is cut to make, the WWE look good or bad. And that's one thing we're moving on right now, but it's very interesting that they didn't seem like they really didn't whitewash making the company look, super good or bad, because they could have gotten rid of all the stuff when it came to the stuff with the concussions and, with the Undertaker not remembering anything from that night. Other documentaries, there's always a lot of times people will say that the WWE does not allow themselves to ever look bad. Everything is always on a WWE point of view. And I give them credit, at least on the early going, that they didn't have to go and let that stay in with the idea of, Undertaker basically saying, he doesn't remember something that happened in a match in WWE. So
yeah, but they also made Vince look like, the best guy in the world.
Oh, yeah, right. No,
so I mean, yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, interesting to see where they go next.
Absolutely. So, and now I'll say the better of the two documentaries, and it's weird. Every week I feel like I'm about to say the second best documentary of the season. And of course, the Chris Benoit is the best one still so far. And next week's might be the best because my love for Owen Hart. But the final days of the Road Warriors, another great outing from Viceland. Viceland is just so good at these documentaries.
I think what I think it is. This one, unlike the Herb Abrams one, which was all over the fucking place. It was all over the place. This documentary was concise. It had a timeline. You could follow the story. You could follow where these guys were. You could follow how things kind of fell apart. I think it was really, really a much more concise story. And they could have gone an hour and a half. They could have gone 2 hours. They could have gone into more things. But I think they did a really good job with the time they had. Unlike some of the other documentaries where it's like, man, I feel like I got to Wikipedia some of this because I've missed out on stuff. I think it was a really concise documentary where they really got all the important information in. They even put over how much of a wrestling kind of hotbed Minnesota was.
Right.
for pro wrestlers with Scott Norton and Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect or whatever we know about the AWA. So I think they did a really nice job of that, talking to Hawk's family, talking to Animal. I thought it was really, really good. Even talking about those last days with Draws and the LOD 2000 and how much of a disaster that was. I thought it was awful. And LOD Road Warriors thought it was awful too. So even how they came up with their gimmick and their character and the spikes, I just thought it was very, very comprehensive. How they did stuff, and unlike New Jack, where they're focused on here's the New Jack incident where he almost killed a 16-year-old. It's like I don't talk to me more about him and who he is and what his story is. And I think they really did that. They didn't stick to let's give you stories, these big long stories. They did a comprehensive deep dive into who the Road Warriors were, and kind of and again, these things always end with someone dying, unfortunately, but really, really compelling. They were my favorite tag team in the 80s other than Midnight Express. So I was a huge, huge fan of theirs. And it was real. And, I heard this about Hawks. And there wasn't a lot of new information necessarily. But there was a lot of good information in there. And I thought it was really, really well done.
Something that this was an interesting one. This was the first time really that I could think of. You didn't have like the regular players in this, though. You didn't have the Jim Rosses, the Jim Cornettes. You had in both these guys were in the NWA and Georgia. Like you said, you had the Midnight Express. When it came to Jim Cornette, you would have thought some of these guys might have been part of it. And for the big ones is the idea that the WWE is not involved, where you didn't have Hook's. Animal's brother, John Laurinaitis. He basically doesn't exist in this whole entire documentary.
Well, I don't. Yeah, and you know what? I don't give a shit about him. I loved Paul Ellering in it. Oh, he was when he read off the thing in the eulogy. Oh, boy, he was tremendous. And maybe that's where they should go, right? Instead of doing this thing where they interview 18 billion people, interview 3 people who had intimate, deep knowledge of it. They interviewed Animal. They interviewed Paul Ellering. They interviewed Scott Norton, who knew them at the time. They interviewed Hawk's family. They didn't do 18 million interviews. And I like that. They stuck with who knows these people the best. That's who we're going to talk to. We're not going to do like the Brawl for All, where it was basically Russo and Cornette fighting during the documentary. I don't care about that. I want to know about these subjects and what happened. And I think they did a really, really good job with the Road Warriors. Of going through that. Paul Ellering, how broken up he was, Animal and his relationship with Animal and how they didn't get along and their sort of thing. And I thought it was really, really great. And maybe that's for next season. Maybe they need to do a little bit more of that. We don't need to interview 15 million people. I don't need to hear Vince Russo again. I don't need to hear Jim Cornette again. We know he's an historian. I get it. We don't need him put over the business again. Maybe stick to having people who have intimate knowledge, who booked the show, who are close relatives, who were tag teams with the person, and you stick with those people. And that's kind of where you go.
I agree. That's a great point. I thought the documentary was top notch. Once again, it was got really good ratings. I believe it was once again broke the record of being the second highest watched episode in the series. Next week, we've got the season finale with Owen Hart, which I think it could possibly even do better than Chris Benoit due to the fact of, there's so much stuff that people don't know about Owen Hart. And I don't know if they'll have stuff from Martha Hart, his wife, who, has kind of stayed silent because of her hatred for the WWE. I don't know how much they'll have in regard to maybe possibly with her.
Is it only going to be an hour or is it going to be?
I think it's only an hour. And that's, there's been a ton of stuff because I think it's like the 20th anniversary was last year of his death. So, there's really a lot of interesting stuff that might come out in result to that. I wish we had more time, possibly next week, Jay, something to think about. I wanted to talk about, because it was such a big thing and with AEW doing such a great job with tag teams, I want you to think about this hopefully next week. We'll have some time to talk about, the great tag teams on how in the 80s, 90s, when the Road Warriors were around, how maybe some of your favorite tag teams of that time. We'll talk maybe more about that, next week when we have some more time. But Jay, we've reached the end of our time for this week. Let everybody know once again how they can follow us on the interweb with Twitter and everything else.
Interwebs, yeah. We are at Worked Shoot Pod, WROKED Shoot Pod, all one word. We tweet the shows. We try to live tweet wrestling shows if we can. We put up articles, try to share our opinion on things. We're both on there, so it kind of represents both of us. It's interesting. Sometimes Corey will get a retweet. I'm like, what the hell did he tweet? I'm like, oh, that's not bad. So we're both on there, represents both of us. We're on Facebook, Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Check us out there. And check us out on iTunes. Again, Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Leave us a review on iTunes. We will read it on the air. Thanks.
Speaking of, we got a 5-star review on iTunes this past week.
LFG.
5-star podcast. Best wrestling podcast I've heard. So glad Work Shoot is back, recording new episodes again. These guys know their stuff. Thoughtful look inside everything wrestling. JE_1985. So, JE, thank you for the support. And
I thought it was going to be SB, my wife, Sharon Brooks. But no, that's awesome. Thank you very much for the love. I really, really appreciate it.
And on that note, our other plug that we always do, check out every Wednesday, You Don't Know Jackie podcast, new podcast every week, just like us. And Jason, I think you should, as always, have the last word, as I can barely speak the language at this point.
I think we're done here. See ya.